listeners, welcome back to the Dreadful Dialogue. You're back with me, Alyse, and today we are going to be chatting about the movie from 1985, Fright Night. As usual, it's an old movie. Why do we have to give spoiler alerts? But we're going to spoil it. I have an awesome guest with me today. Her name is Kristen, and she is also a podcaster. She has her own podcast called Reality Rewind, and we'll make sure at the end Kristen shares all about that podcast. I want you guys to know where to follow her. That's if you're into reality TV shows. Yes, I hate to admit it. Some people might shame me for it, but it is what it is. I do watch things like 90 Day Fiancé and certain reality shows. So super happy to have you here today, Kristen. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you. I am a huge horror Halloween gal myself, so this is right up my alley.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's super cool to have you here. Yeah, we met through social media, being fans of other podcasts, and saw that she was into the same genre, even though she covers a different type of thing on her podcast. We can be fans of multiple things, so thought I'd invite her in. And today we're going to be talking about Fright Night. And before we get into our conversation, I want to give a little synopsis, and I can't take credit for this. This is just straight off of Google, guys, so I did not write this. So Fright Night is a movie that follows a teenage boy named Charlie, and he suspects his new neighbor is a vampire. Nobody seems to believe him. He goes and he enlists the help of, I guess a washed up horror movie actor. He's like a horror movie host, of the vein of like Svengoolie or Elvira or Joe Bob Briggs. And this guy used to play a vampire hunter, so he's hoping that with this guy that they can find a way to stop the vampire that he believes moved in next door from killing again. So that's our little synopsis in case you haven't seen it. I'm starting to add those in now. Kristen, yeah. Do you remember the first time that you ever saw this movie?
I do. So I remember watching this with my at the time boyfriend back in 2001. He knew that I was like really into horror movies, so he was trying to impress me. He's like, "Oh, you haven't seen this one?" And we went to Blockbuster, and it's like back in the day, So so we watched it, and I was like 18 years old. I'm dating myself here.
No, it's all
big time.
We're both wait. To quote somebody, we're women of a certain age. So, and
yes,
I think
we are.
I think I've heard on one of your podcasts we're only like a year apart, so I'm right there with you.
I love it. Yeah. So that was my first time watching it, and I fell in love. And I was actually surprised. I've never seen this before. So it was like a whole new world, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And now it's a staple every Halloween. We try to find it on TV or whatnot, and then I just recently bought it on Amazon because I couldn't get enough of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I can recall the first time I watched it, but I thought you made a really good point. You brought up Blockbuster. Again, we grew up in that era. Going to the video stores, Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, mom and pop video stores. And I remember seeing the cover all the time.
Yes.
I think it's so iconic with the house, and it's the character of Amy like up in the clouds, and and it was so crazy to me though, because, and I'll go off on a little tangent, I think that so many horror movies from the 80s, sometimes the covers didn't match it at all. Sometimes they looked way scarier. Yeah, they looked way scarier than they actually were, or they didn't follow at all. Like, I mean, you don't really see Amy like that. I mean, we see her when she emerges as this sexy vampire, but we don't see her like in the smoke or clouds or whatever that's supposed to be in the moonlight. But I thought it was a really cool cover. I can't recall the first time I saw it. I do remember seeing the video cover. But I love the opening of this movie. Like when, it opens and you got the moonlight, and then you just get the title card, Fright Night, and the fangs come out.
Yes, it's iconic.
Yeah.
And then it like quickly, like you hear the movie that they're watching in Charlie's bedroom, and it's just like, wow, it really brings you back to those times.
And it's really cool because I think that I love that they did that, because it kind of pays homage to like multiple genres, I guess you could say, of vampires, right? It kind of that's more like Dracula type, like original Dracula type stuff. But then this is an
Right.
80s movies and this movie 80s movie, and this is totally like an 80s movie time capsule to me. So yeah, I thought that was a really cool opening. You get the title card, and then you get the two main character, the main couple, watching
Right.
Peter Vincent, who
Yes.
doing his thing, being a movie host and killing a vampire. And even the names I think are like, instead of Mina from like Dracula, I think it's like Lena or Nina. I don't remember the
Right.
character's
It
name,
was
apparently.
definitely a play on that. It was a play on that for sure.
Yeah. Do you think that this movie, watching it now, does it still hold up to you from like when you first saw it?
I think so because like the horror elements and strong characters and it's a clever storyline. Although some aspects like the special effects and the portrayal of like technology might seem dated now, it's actually pretty like on par with like how they did the makeup and everything, and like we'll get into it more later, like when they're transforming into vampires, when the bat shows up, it's just like it blows your mind of like how creative this whole movie pans out to be. And then when you compare it to like, you know, the diversity of characters with like other 80s movies, it actually had more of that in this movie than you would expect it would. And one of my favorite scenes, speaking of diverse characters, is when the lieutenant shows up.
Oh
And you're
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, I know I'm jumping ahead just a little bit,
No,
but
no,
like,
we can go wherever.
okay, cool. Because like when Charlie is seeking like help of the police and the lieutenant shows up and he's like has Charlie with him in the house, you're just like, Charlie would never show up during a police investigation. So like that part was like a little like goofy, and that plays into the campiness
Yeah.
of the movie. Like just how like the Elvira movies and like what Bruce Campbell, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All those types of movies. Yeah. So it plays into that campiness, and I love that so much.
Yeah, I that's definitely something that I've noticed. I'm like, seriously, like just off of your word, and then like Jerry just lets him in, like, oh yeah, whatever,
I
and
know.
like who would do that if you went to the
I
police station? They'd
know.
probably think you're crazy, and the fact that the
Absolutely.
man even indulged him and came to the house, and
I
then
know.
yeah, they in the house, like that wouldn't happen. It'd be like, kid, write a report and whatever, Like, I
Exactly.
mean, I don't know. I'm not a police officer. Clearly, I'm not in law enforcement, but I
Same.
don't think that would happen. So yeah, definitely added to the campiness of it.
It really did.
Um,
And like letting Charlie like touch evidence, I'm like, what are you doing?
yeah, yeah. And I think that actor, I've seen him somewhere. Is he in Ghostbusters? He's
I don't know.
in,
He
I
does
don't,
look familiar to me.
he's probably a 80s character actor. And I didn't put it, I try to, I have all like, I always have my cast because I've messed up before. Like, in fact, I'll listen back to old podcasts. I'm like, oh, I said the wrong actor's name. I'm like, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not on purpose, nothing but love. But yeah, I didn't get his name. But speaking of the special effects, going back to what you were talking about,
Yeah.
from what I understand, and I couldn't get like clear timelines and information, it sounds like the same crew that did Ghostbusters did this
Oh.
one. Like it was easier, I guess, at that time in Hollywood to just be like, oh well, we're just gonna take this whole crew and we're gonna go do another movie now. So I think some
Yeah.
of the special effects might be similar. And then I think the same with somebody might have been on American Werewolf in London. But again, I couldn't get like a clear timeline. I couldn't get exact names of crew members and what position, what their actual jobs are to, give them their due justice on that. But I thought that was cool. And
Right.
so it's like, it makes sense because all of those 80s effects, you know, they were all really cool to us at the time. Like you said, of course, if you're a youngster and you're watching this like for the first time, it might not look as good to you. But to me, I mean, at the time, I loved it. And I
Right.
thought there were so many different effects from the way like Billy dies to Ed's, I guess de-transformation from a wolf
Yes.
to a boy.
Right.
The Amy's look when she's got the like shark looking teeth, or her big fangs, and they just get bigger in the next scene. I thought it was all really
Yeah.
cool.
It's really
Yeah,
clever how they pulled that off.
yeah. Did you have any characters that you really like? What was your favorite character, I guess I should say, in this film?
I have to say my favorite one is Peter Vincent because he's so cheesy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I love it. Like he tries to like portray himself as like this badass, but then he's like, actually, I'm just an actor, and actually, Peter Vincent isn't my real name, and it just cracks me up every time I watch it, because like he really does like transform as the movie goes on from like this scared man to like, well, kind of being like, well, you could pay me in your $500 savings bond, Amy, which
Bonds, right?
which really kills me. Like, it is so hilarious hearing that now, in 2025, and then like Charlie helping him find like this newfound confidence within him, and like he was about to run away, but then there he is, like, here I am to save the day. So I have like this fondness for Peter Vincent. He's definitely one of my faves, if not the
Yeah.
fave.
Yeah, he really grew as a character. Again, his confidence super grew. And he's played by Roddy McDowall, which if
Yeah.
you guys look him up, you could check out his IMDb. He has a ton of roles. He's been in some really good movies. I can't recall any of them off the top of my head, but he's not brand new to Hollywood. I don't
No,
know how they
not
even
at all.
got him. And it's really cool too, his name, Peter Vincent, right? It's like a shout out
Yeah.
to Vincent Price and Peter Cushing. And
Yes, yes.
again,
I love
paying
that.
these little homages to like the genre, and then especially to vampires. I thought that was super cool. Yeah, I don't know who my favorite character is. Like, I like Ed at times, because I kind of feel like anybody who wasn't like the coolest kid in school, like I wasn't the coolest kid, I wasn't the nerdiest kid, I was just somewhere in between. Like, I had friends, but I
Right.
wasn't like prom queen status. I wasn't like
Oh,
that kind
same,
of girl.
same.
Yeah.
I
So-
was
so-
not either.
yeah, so Ed was like a cool guy in the sense that like you kind of felt bad for him, because you they don't tell you initially, but when Jerry goes to change him, like he's like, they won't pick on you anymore, and
I
his
know.
silliness, he brought the best comedy to it. So I think he might be my favorite one, but other than that, like, I didn't really root for anybody. Like, there was times I was rooting for Jerry even though he's like the bad guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's times I'm like, oh, but he needs to be stopped. I think what made me not root for him was like that Amy was like, I'm like, dude, she's in high school, and like, you're a grown man.
Yes.
Granted, you're a really old man because you're a vampire, but whatever age you were when you became a vampire, clearly you were not in high school.
No, not at all. I was just like, oh my goodness, that's risque
Yeah.
and illegal.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Okay. Yeah, 80. There you go, 1980s again for you. Just put it out there on the screen like it's no big deal.
Yeah,
They could get away
exactly.
with that. They'd have to age them. I don't know if they. I watched the reboot and I can't remember it even well enough. I know it's Colin Farrell, and I don't
Oh,
remember.
okay.
I couldn't even speak on it, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure they didn't make it taboo like that.
Oh, okay.
So did you like the character of Jerry? Did you root for Jerry at all, I guess? I should ask you that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, like, when I first watched this, I thought it was Tony Danza. I was like,
Who's the boss?
is that who's the boss?
Yeah.
But no, it's obviously Chris Sarandon. But yeah, he's so charismatic. He's really alluring. There's certain times where I found him more attractive than others, like when his hair was like super curly. I don't know why. I was just like, oh wow, he's really handsome. And like he would give like these smoldering looks, almost like James Dean-esque. And I was like, okay, like I see the appeal. And like you could just be really charmed by him, and like part of me was like, well, is he really that bad? Maybe I could save him, like which is so toxic. But yeah, like I would root for him sometimes. And then like when he would put Charlie or like Amy in these like compromising positions, or like even like the random characters where we don't really know their names, and like I guess it was a sex worker that showed up to his house.
That's what
I was
it
just
seemed
like,
to be. Yeah.
I was just like, oh no, you're in danger, girl. Like, run away. But yeah, so I would go back and forth a lot
Yeah.
with Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely they played into the stereotype of like a sexy vampire, I guess you could say.
Yes. Yes.
And he had that at moments. And then there was times like, and I don't know if it's like, even though I was, born in the 80s and lived through it, there's times I was like, oh, I like his outfit. And there's times I'm like, what are you wearing?
Yeah,
But I'm like,
same.
it's the 80s.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
I found him. Well, I was just going to say, like, especially like in the club scene where he was vulgar with Amy, I was also like, but why does he look so good? Like when he's
Yeah.
in that scene, he looked amazing.
Yeah. He's
So
he's
yeah,
definitely tall, dark, and handsome, as they say, right?
definitely is. He definitely is.
Yeah. And Amy, I thought they did such a good job with Amy, making her. And shout out to Amanda Bierce. I don't know if you've ever, growing up for me, Married with Children was like a staple in our
Yes.
household. We loved
Definitely
that
same.
sitcom. Yeah.
Yes.
But they
I
did cool
forgot.
make. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. You go ahead.
They made her they did a really good job of making her look very young with her little bow in her hair. Then it was like, oh, when she became like a vampire, she got all sexed up and the hair was going. And I thought it was a
Yes.
really cool, like, dramatic change.
Yeah, I thought she looked really good. I mean, I had to laugh when I first saw her with the bows in her hair, and like her whole look was very much giving the actress from Empty Nest, Christy McNichols. I was like, they look so much alike. I never realized it until that moment. But yeah, she when she had her transformation, I was just like, wow, she could really be a sex symbol in this movie as well, even if she is a vampire demon person. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, even as a vampire, she looked. I mean, yeah, she looked good. She
yeah.
was sexy as a vampire too.
Yeah, definitely. And I really loved like in the beginning how she had like her strong convictions, how she like stood up for herself. Like sure, she's a basic teenage girl, but like, when Charlie's trying to put the moves on her and stuff, she's like, "Nope." And I like appreciate them showing that, especially during the 80s where I feel like they wouldn't have shown a strong female character as much. I really admired that about Amy.
Yeah, I mean, because Charlie was pretty heavy on the pressuring at the opening scene with
Yeah.
trying to get her to sleep with him, and then all of a sudden he's not interested in her. Then he's interested in her. I mean, granted, he's trying to figure out what's going on next door, but yeah, that was definitely one of the few times that you did see in the 80s and even movies prior to that, sticking up for herself. I mean, it's something women are going to continue to go through. I mean, young girls go through it
Yeah.
when they're at that age. And yeah, I hadn't put as much thought into it till you brought it up. It was really cool to see her sticking
Yeah.
up for herself and not letting Charlie, making it on her terms. I mean, you hear so many people say, oh, well, she was dressed this way or she was doing that. And I'm probably going to piss some people off right now talking about it, but it is what it is. But,
It is, yeah, it's the truth
consent's a big
though.
thing.
It is, and
It's essential.
I really admire like the writers like making that a piece of Amy and like, you know, yeah, she comes off like very caring and loving too, and but also very strong. And like it just goes to show like you can be that balance of a person as a woman. And I love to see it.
Yeah. I don't know. And it was really weird. Like I couldn't figure out, and this makes me think of the mom now. Like the mom was very odd. Like I felt like they weren't quite sure what to like do with her character. Like she was in
Yeah.
it, then she wasn't in it, but like it was weird how when they came downstairs after the opening scene, the mom's like, "Oh, were you guys just studying?" And it's like, did she know what they were doing? Did she want them to do
Right.
stuff? Like I didn't know where they were going with it. She gave me vibes of like the mom from oh gosh, Nightmare on Elm Street, where like the mom's just drinking, and I'm like,
Yeah.
are they just playing up like a stereotypical like bad single mom? I'm like, because that's not cool. Like, I don't
No.
know, it was weird. The whole thing, I wasn't sure what to take with that scene, and every time I watch it, I'm trying to figure out like, did the mom want them to fool around? Did she really think that they were just being wholesome? I don't have the answer. I don't know. I don't know if you have any
Right.
thoughts on that.
I did like find her to be pretty mousy and very I don't know if naive's the right word, but almost like kind of just not really caring too much. But then like they would show her in caring ways, like in the weirdest ways, where she's like, "Charlie, did you have a nightmare?" And then like, "Charlie, I made you hot chocolate." I'm like, pick which side you're gonna be on, mom.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, when she mentioned like lovers quarrels are normal or whatever, I was just like,
You
they
need
are
to have them before you get
17.
married. Yeah. And I was like, why are you trying to marry them off? But then I'm like, I
I
guess I'm
know.
like, were they still pressuring people to get married that young? I mean, this isn't the 50s, right? Or I don't know.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's pretty possible because like my parents were married in the early 80s at 19 and 21. So it is possible, but yeah, I just thought that was pretty like that was actually kind of behind the times when you're watching it today.
Yeah,
that
for
is.
sure. Yeah,
Right.
but I mean, she did. You're right. I mean, even when we see Ed when he's changed, which I don't know what to call him, because he became a werewolf, but he was kind of a vampire. I don't know what he was, but how he's like,
Yeah.
"Mom left you a note. She left your dinner in the oven."
That is one of my favorite, like another favorite scene of mine where he's just like,
Hmm.
your dinner's in the oven. Like, he's just so funny. And then, yeah, with the mom too, like going back real quick, it's really, it's really weird how they made her to be so like mousy and flaky and like Amy not. You know what I mean? Like until Amy was under the spell of Jerry. So like seeing the differences of how they portray each female character was interesting to me. But yeah, Ed's transformation, oh my gosh, that was something.
Yeah, it's kind of it kind of reminds me of American Werewolf in London, which we've covered that, guys. If you're listening, you haven't
Oh,
listened
it's
to that
so good.
episode, shameless plug here. Yeah, I like I said, I think some of the crew might have been the same. I don't know exactly which special effects guys or which people exactly, but
Right.
there was some shared crew members. And so it reminds me of like that werewolf transformation. Of course, Thriller, because that was the same guy who did American Werewolf, did Thriller. And then of
Right.
course, Fly with Jeff Goldblum. That transformation still like sits with
Oh
me from
my
when I was a kid.
gosh.
So yeah, it was kind of gross but cool all at the same time.
Yes,
To see his
definitely.
transformation. Yeah, so that was another favorite part. It's kind of gruesome, but I mean, why do you watch horror if you don't want to see some of the some of that stuff
Absolutely.
too? Yeah.
Absolutely. And like I definitely could empathize with him a lot. As we mentioned earlier, like his confidence level is so low and you can tell like he just wants to be loved and it's like what were your parents like, Ed? Like why are you feeling this way?
Yeah.
And he wants to be accepted and I feel like people found him extremely annoying because I remember when I first watched it being like, "Oh, this guy is annoying." But then like as time goes on, you kind of just see him as like almost like a lost little puppy who's just trying to find his way home. Um but yeah,
Literally.
literally,
Literally when he
yeah.
gets changed.
When
Yeah.
he's a wolf, werewolf, vampire hybrid.
Yeah. Yeah, they're playing really fast and loose with those rules, right?
They are.
I couldn't figure out. I'm like, and you'll see, like I'm sure you saw because our little pre notes that we share. Um, I put like I'm all is that his? I put like is Billy his familiar? And then I put Ed was a vampire, but I'm like, was he a vampire? Like, was he a werewolf? Was he a vampire that can transform into other things? Because then Jerry can transform into a bat, but I'm
Yeah.
not like 100% expert on all vampire lore. And again, this is not a real entity. It's not like humans where there's
Right.
science. It's to the writer's choice. But I think for the most part, they stuck to all the like stereotypical rules of like sunlight, and it looked like he had to have his dirt there, his soil or whatever there. He had a
Right.
coffin,
And the cross.
the crosses, which it worked with
Yeah.
some, but didn't work with. I think in there's always theories about like why the cross worked at one point for Peter Vincent, and then it didn't work. It was like, oh, because then he believed, but then some people said, well, no, it's supposed to be a religious belief, and so I
Right.
don't know. They don't. It's again, it's sometimes like I guess when I do these podcasts, I'm like, don't look that much into it. At least like just enjoy it, but you can't help it when you're watching something a little
Right.
more critically because you're gonna talk about it and you want to have enough to talk about. So yeah, the rules were
Absolutely.
kind of bent, but for the most part traditional.
Yeah, I thought like when it was the belief thing, now it's just my theory. I thought it was more like he actually started believing like, "Oh shit, this is real deal. Like he's a real vampire." So I kind
Ah,
of I kind of thought that because at the beginning, like when you're first introduced to him and he's at Jerry's house, he's very skeptical and like he hands over the quote unquote holy water, which I believe is just tap water, right?
yeah, they
Um,
had pre-planned it not to actually
yeah,
use real stuff.
right, right. So it's like he was very skeptical and did not believe Charlie at all. And then once he started believing, like, oh gosh, this is really happening, then it started working. I could be wrong, but that's just what I picked up on. I mean, it's up for interpretation, I guess.
Exactly. No, I don't think that's a poor theory at all. I think that's a good theory. Some people had said because he started, but I heard on somebody's podcast. They're like, oh, it's because he started believing in himself because he'd lost his confidence, right? Because he'd lost his
Yeah.
job, he was getting evicted, he's just kind of
Right.
down in the dumps, and then he started to believe in himself as he built confidence as a character. But that would
Right.
totally make sense too, that he actually believed in the vampires. I think
Yeah.
that's great.
Or it could be both, right?
Yeah, I like you, and there's no right or wrong. I don't think that when Tom Holland, and not Tom Holland Spider-Man, Tom Holland the
Oh yeah.
director, who I think wrote it as well. I mean, I don't know if, I guess we'd have to ask somebody like him, but I don't know if that was even something that they were stressed about. You know, like I said, some movies it's like you don't need to know every little perfect detail, but I think all of
Right.
those are good theories.
Well, thank you. I love it.
Yeah, I really like though. Speaking of his lack of confidence, when oh my god, I'm forgetting his name, Charlie, when the main character goes and he's looking for him and he's like, oh, I need you to help me. Like everything you said, do you think that's true about believing in vampires? And Peter Vincent delivers this like classic line that I'm like, oh, he nailed it. And he's talking about me when he says, and I'm gonna read this because again, this is quoting from the movie. He says, unfortunately, because again, Charlie's asking him, hey, do you really believe in vampires? And he says, unfortunately, none of your generation seems to be. And Charlie says, what do you mean? He says, hey, I've just been fired because nobody wants to see vampire killers anymore, or vampires either. Apparently, all they want are demented madmen running around in ski masks, hacking young virgins. I'm like, oh my God, that's what I want. They don't have to be virgins. They don't have to be virgins. But yeah, I want to see killing too. But
Right.
it was, again, paying homages to other films in
Yeah.
the genre, because this was like the heyday of like Friday the 13th. And, and for me, those were a lot of the initial horror movies that hooked me in. So I thought that was like a
Definitely.
really cool line. I'm like, I want vampires and I want the bad guy. I want them
Yeah,
both.
I wanted well, like Halloween or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's where it brought me back to. I was like, "Oh, that's crazy cool." Like I love those little callbacks.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought that was a great line that they wrote for him.
Definitely.
Yeah. Have you ever seen, and I didn't even talk about this with you previously, have you ever seen the movie Once Bitten?
Oh my gosh, yes, I have, but it's a long time ago. I remember watching it probably when I shouldn't have been watching it in the mid 90s when I'm like 13, 14 years old. But yeah, I've seen that
Yeah.
movie before. So
Yeah,
good.
yeah, I think it's on Tubi right now with Jim Carrey. And it's funny because I
Yes.
realized I had talked to my brother weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and I was talking about how I was like, oh, I want to cover that movie eventually. And I was like, have you even seen, like, I didn't even know if he'd seen it. And me and him grew up watching movies together all the time, me and my
Yeah.
brother Adam. And I was like, he's like, yeah, it's just like Once Bitten, right? And I'm like, yeah, you know what it kind of is. I said, this is kind of the more grown up version because there's some
Yes.
nudity and it's a little more sexy. But there's so many similarities, and I had to look up. They came out the same year, and Once
Oh,
Bitten was only
wow.
released a few years later. And
Okay.
the way I'm wrapping this back around to the movie is I want to talk about the music of Fright Night.
So
Awesome.
good.
Yeah, great soundtrack, right?
Amazing
And that dance
soundtrack.
scene.
The dance scene is so good. I mean, when you look back about I'm sorry, when you look back on the soundtrack and you see like Devo and Jay Giles band and stuff like that, it's just the ultimate 80s like goodness in my
Yeah,
opinion. Yeah,
yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, I love, like especially the club scene. That's where you get the most of it, right?
Yeah.
When they're dancing, you get that Evelyn Champagne
Yes.
King. I could play
Yes.
that song on repeat. The outfits, like it's total 80s, dance montage type
Yeah.
scene. And they have an iconic scene like that in Once Bitten too. So there are a lot of similarities. That's a movie I'm gonna need to cover.
Well, if you want a friend to cover it, I mean, just this girl sitting here with blue hair would love to do that with you at some point. Just wink, wink,
Yeah,
nudge, nudge.
gotcha. We'll add it to the docket for sure. But yeah,
Yay!
that's another great movie. If people, so I think we're gonna end up covering it. So go pre-watch that one, guys. It's on Tubi. You know, things come and
So
go from
good.
Tubi.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the dancing, um, all the music. You could enjoy this movie if you're a person who is a teenager or a child of the 80s. You will
Yeah.
definitely enjoy this movie just for that, because there's so much good music. I mean, even the song in the credits The actual like
So
Fright Night
good.
song is good.
Yes, I love that one too. That's one of my faves. And like going back to like all the 80s stuff too, like the aesthetic is like, oh, it's chef's kiss. I love all the outfits, the soft blazers, the ugly sweaters, like everything is just so, it's giving, right? It's just
Yeah,
giving
yeah.
80s. I love it.
Jerry's trench coat, and I'm like, is that a members only trench coat? Like,
I
I don't know if
know.
members only made trench coats. I know they made jackets. Like, oh my god, I'm thinking of my grandpa in the '80s rocking his little members
Oh
only
yeah.
jacket. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
And
the outfits are great.
I love it so much. And the hairstyles too, like even with Ed's like super spiky hair, I'm like, oh, so cute. I
Yeah.
definitely would have had a crush on Charlie if I were a teenager during that time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
wasn't
he's
bad looking.
adorable.
Yeah, he wasn't
Yeah.
terrible looking. He was kind of, I don't know, thinking back the way he was towards Amy. But then he did really do his best to save her. And those times I'm like, is he trying to save her or is he trying to save just other people from being killed? But I'm like, wait, either way, that's good, right? Like, she would be
Yeah.
included in that. So, yeah, I had
Yeah.
trouble with him because, like I said, I didn't find myself rooting for one person or the other. I think because I mean
Sure.
this is just such a really fun movie that you whether you're rooting for the quote unquote bad guy or quote unquote good guy, whatever, like bad or good, all of the characters have something interesting about them that you're enjoying. So
Absolutely. Everybody's likable except for maybe the mom, right? The mom is a little complicated, but like they all have likable points
yeah,
about
I
them
didn't.
at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't dislike the familiar. I just you didn't spend enough time with him. What's his name again? Billy. It was you didn't
Billy,
really
yeah.
spend. Yeah, I didn't feel like we spent enough time with him to really care one way
To
or the other.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, some of his like he was giving like this ominous, creepy vibe though. Whenever he was there, I was just like, something ain't right with this one.
Yeah, he did really good with his facial expressions. Like he would make kind
Yeah.
of these like faces at Charlie, and I even read somewhere that the actors that played Billy, Jonathan Stark, and that played Jerry Dandridge, Chris Sarandon, that they've been asked later, like, "Hey, did you think there was something, was there something homoerotic going on with your two characters?" And they're like, "I don't know," and that Tom Holland said, yeah, I kind of was inferring that, but I wasn't putting it all the way out there." So I'm like, oh, either way, like I
Oh,
did seem like they were kind of friendly, but like that's also is that kind of a trope that you see in some in some vampire films and books,
this
like
is true.
you kind of interviewed the vampire. If you've read Anne Rice's books, I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
they don't come out and say that some of these characters are gay, but they are if you can read
Right.
between the lines. And then now with the new TV show, they very clearly are. So I thought
Oh,
that was
okay.
interesting that like Tom Holland's like, yeah, I kind of threw that in there, but it wasn't like a big thing, It was just kind of something
Yeah.
he thought of like, oh, make them like there's a scene where like they're kind of standing a little close and
Right, right. Yeah, they were very cozy. That I didn't really pick up on that, but I will have to rewatch too to
yeah, I
see
mean,
that.
I didn't know. I picked up on it a little, but not to the point where I was like, oh, they're together too. But I'm like, I guess it could go either way. It doesn't deter or add to the story. It's just
No.
another little layer of nuance that you can pick up and you can do what you want with it. I don't think it hurts the story. I think like
No,
you
not at
spoke
all.
earlier, if anything, it adds a little to the diversity of the film.
But yeah, with the going back to like with the diversity, it was nice seeing black characters in the movie and especially like having speaking parts, which I think like wasn't really a thing or very common back then. And then now adding this element of a potential gay relationship, I'm here for it. I love it. I love to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't see many characters in black horror movies, or if they are, there's usually again that trope of like they're the first one to die or they're the token
Right.
person. I mean, none of the black characters were in the forefront, but we did have the bouncers, we had the police officer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be really cool if they ever did a reboot. I mean, you could totally add in some more things with that. And again, I don't remember in the newest reboot, which I think was like 2011. I don't remember
Okay.
the makeup of all the characters.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm definitely curious and want to watch it because I never watched the reboot. So I may have to do that at some point this weekend.
Yeah, I haven't. I don't know where it's at right now, where it's streaming or anything. And I was hoping to get to it. It just didn't happen for this one. Do you have any other scenes that you really liked besides like we talked about the transformation and the club
Yeah.
scene?
I love, so there's some, I have three scenes that I really loved. And I guess almost like quotes that I really loved. When Jerry's like, "Welcome to Fright Night. For real." And it's just like so quirky and like adds to the element of cheese. And it made me laugh. And I know it probably wasn't meant to be funny, but I'm a weirdo, so it made me laugh. Um, I also, as going back to the lieutenant detective homicide investigation, where Charlie's like, "Look, I'm telling you, Jerry Dandridge is a vampire," and then Detective Lennox says, "Sure, and I'm Dirty Harry. Now let me tell you something, kid. If I ever catch your ass down at the station again, I'm throwing you in jail forever." That really got me. And then when Evil Ed said, when he was like screwing around with Charlie and Amy, and he's like, "He got me, Charlie. He bit me. You know what you're going to have to do now, don't you? Kill me, Charlie, before I turn you into a vampire and give you a hickey." And like, oh, those three things are my favorite.
Yeah, and then I like when Ed's like, "You're so cool, Brewster."
Yes, you're so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Ed coming in clutch there with the he's like the boy who cried wolf, but then it's like, oh no, he really did turn
Right.
into a wolf later when he, or again, we don't know, vampire, wolf, some sort of supernatural entity. Yeah, there's some
Yeah.
really hidden little lines in there that you can pick up,
Yeah.
and
I
I
feel
do
like
like
they're
that they,
timeless.
yeah, I love that they tied it back at the end too, going back to the to Peter Vincent's character. I like that they had, when they opened up the film, we saw him, on screen, and Amy and Charlie are, fooling around. And then at the end, we get the same thing. Which, how did he get his job back? That part they
I
didn't make
know.
sense. But yeah, they tied it back to the end, and yeah, and I agree with you. Like the campiness, it's like I think for this one, it's a perfect amount of campiness because it's not too over the top.
Right.
It's not a full like comedy. It has comedy horror, but comedy's not right at the front. It does have some drama,
Yeah.
and some horror in it, and a storyline to follow. Whereas sometimes some horror comedies, it's just comedy throughout, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this isn't that movie.
Right. And the storytelling too is like really intriguing. I think it really captures, the viewer pretty quick too, because the opening scene really draws you in. And like it has some elements of being like lighthearted and then also a bit suspenseful. So it just keeps you captivated the whole time. And I love everything about this movie.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. I was so glad when I was like, "Hey, do you want to cover this movie?" You're like, "Yeah, I'm in," because I've been wanting to cover this one for a while.
Nice.
It's fun, it's entertaining. Again, I think it stands the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a coming of age story.
It
It's
is.
it's a 80s time capsule with a flair of other movies, and plays on lots of vampire tropes, and yeah, there's just a lot to it in it. And I think it's surprisingly a pretty good runtime, because sometimes some horror movies, or any movies, there's
Yeah.
times you're like, oh, this is way too long, or oh, this is way too short. I think they did a pretty good job of like keeping me entertained. There's sometimes where you're watching something, and if I start to like stare at my phone or do other things, then I'm like, oh, some of these scenes probably could have been cut out. But I think they
Right.
did good with everything needed to be in there to kind of make it add up.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like it's even a coming of age story for Charlie too, because like you see him like be this like naive, somewhat sheltered teenager who's deeply immersed in horror movies to like this mature, courageous young man who confronts a real life threat, not only towards himself but towards loved ones. So that's almost like a redemption arc for him, because like as we said in the beginning, like he's pressuring Amy, to be intimate, and he like grows over time.
Yeah.
So I really like that aspect too.
Yeah, he kind of becomes more of like less of a teen. I mean, he's still a teenager, but he kind of
Of
becomes more of a
course.
man. And they don't ever tell us what's going on. They don't ever give us any hint as to where his father is, other than we know that there is no father living in the household.
Yeah.
And the mom, of course, she's on the prowl. Like, she's checking out Jerry. She's like, hey, there's this guy next door.
Yeah, she invites him over. She's like, hey there, good looking. Come over anytime, Jerry.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe I think that was a good thing, thinking of what you said in terms of being coming of age, that, yeah, it kind of forced them to grow up. And not have to like worry and understand that there's more things going on. Because, I mean, there's a scene where he's all like, oh, man, I can't believe the teacher gave us a pop quiz and didn't tell us. And Ed's like, that's the point of a pop quiz. It kind of made him realize, hey, some of your teenage problems are you're going to have much bigger things in life to deal with. Hopefully none of us ever have to deal with our neighbors being a vampire or some sort of new supernatural entity. But he did man up.
Yeah. It was like marking a transition into adulthood by facing like challenges and learning valuable lessons about responsibility and self-reliance too. Like, people were trying to gaslight him. They didn't believe him, but he like persevered the whole time. He was like, I know what I saw. And, some people aren't able to do that.
Yeah. He got a little distracted at times. He was like, oh, I got to check out this girl that's naked real quick.
Yeah. Like, he always went back to being a teenager at some point. Yeah. But for the most part, you see him kind of evolve into like, this caring, courageous person.
Yeah. And I'm a dreamer. I like to hope that after that he treated Amy much better.
I certainly hope so.
In terms of pressuring her. I mean, I think they made it seem like they might have at that point been hooking up in that way, but hopefully it was because she wanted to, and she, it wasn't Charlie being immature about it.
I hope. Fingers crossed for Charlie. I'm holding out hope for you, man.
Friend that he's a kid, like he's like one of our friends.
I know, exactly.
I get way too into my movies. Yeah. So before we finish up, is there anything else that you really wanted to chat about the movie, or anything you wanted to bring up?
Well, I was just going to say, like, I love the themes of the movie of like believing in yourself, perseverance, sticking to your convictions, like with each character too. It was really nice seeing all of that. And if you haven't watched it, what are you waiting for, people? Watch it. It's so good. And it holds up really well. It ages pretty well.
I think so. Yeah. It's, like I said, it's very entertaining. It's got a storyline, some fun horror, some fun effects.
Yeah.
Some good music. Just the right amount of campiness. Yeah. Obviously, I like it. I wouldn't be talking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, awesome. So, Kristen, before we sign off of here, I want you to tell the listeners about your podcast and where they can find your podcast, and if you have anything else to share, like your social media.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I have a podcast with two of my best friends. It's called the Reality Rewind Podcast, and we recap old school reality TV shows, and we call out like how they have not aged well in current times. It's really nostalgic. We love going back to all of that. You can find us on Instagram at Reality Rewind Pod, and we're also launching a Patreon on Valentine's Day. So we're really excited. We're growing. We're just a little baby podcast, but we're having a lot of fun.
Great. What shows do you what are some of the current shows you guys are covering?
Right now we are doing Rock of Love and Love After Lockup. So that's been a lot of fun. And then in March, we're going to start our rewatch of Sister Wives. That's one of our favorite shows. So we figured, hey, what the heck? Let's go back to, I think it was 2012, 2010, something like that. I know.
It's been on a long time.
Yeah, it's been on a long, long time. And then on Patreon, we're going to do Jersey Shore because I'm a Jersey girl and it's very problematic and I want to call all of that out. And we're going to do some scripted stuff like Big Love and some documentaries here and there.
Wow, you guys got a lot on your plate. So Reality Rewind, when you're not watching horror movies, if you like the horror of reality TV, go check that out. Go check out their podcast.
There's a lot of horrors, I'll tell you that.
Wait,
A
what are
lot
we
of
talking
them,
about here?
right? A lot of horrors.
Not as scary.
A lot of scary stuff, especially Bret Michaels. So,
Yeah. Oh god,
yeah,
that guy's totally horrific, and I mean that with the
definitely.
W and with an H.
Yes, me too. Me too. I call him
I'm
out on the regular.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I had a really good time chatting about
Me
Fright Night with you,
too.
Kristen. We look forward to collaborating again in the future.
Definitely. I
And
would love to have you on too. Especially when
yeah.
we do Sister Wives, we would love to have
Ah.
you on. Thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute delight. I had so much fun.
Awesome. Well, listeners, if you guys want more of our content, you can check out our website, dreadfuldialogue.com. Also on Instagram at Dreadful Dialogue Podcast, and have a good